Do any of you know who this guy is? You don't know who this is? Do you know who that is? Hmm? Ranger? No, he's not a Power Ranger. He is a Transformer. What's his name, William? Optimus Prime. Yes, Optimus Prime is a Transformer. More importantly, Optimus Prime is the leader of the Autobots. And Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and all the other Autobots came to Earth to defend us against the evil Decepticons. Megatron and Starscream and Shockwave and all the other evil Decepticons who also came from the planet Cybertron, but they came here to take over the planet. And I was a kid when the original Transformers cartoon first came on, and it was awesome. If you were a 6-year-old boy in 1984, everyone you knew was talking about the Transformers. Every day they'd be in their base, the Autobots would be in their base, the Decepticons would be up to no good, and Optimus Prime would say, "Autobots, roll out." And then they'd transform and they'd make this cool sound. And they'd all change into cars and trucks and jets and motorcycles and helicopters, and they'd all ride out to wherever the Decepticons were, and they'd battle it out. And of course the Autobots would always win because they were the best. And it wasn't just the Autobots and the Decepticons. There were the ones that changed into giant bugs called the Insecticons, or the ones that changed into big green construction trucks called the Constructicons, or there were the Dinobots. Any idea what the Dinobots might have turned into? Dinosaurs, yes. Yes, dinos and dinosaurs are the same thing. So, yeah, Transformers were awesome. Anybody else out here watch Transformers when you were little? I see a few of you out there. You know what's up. Around that same time, there was another cartoon, and it was just like the Transformers. It had giant robots that came from a different planet. There were good robots, and there were bad robots. And just like the Transformers, they could change into cars and trucks and motorcycles and helicopters and jets. It was just like the Transformers. It was called Challenge of the GoBots. And if you could go back to 1984 or 1985 and ask any kid if they watched Challenge of the GoBots, they would tell you absolutely not. Nobody admitted to watching Challenge of the GoBots, even if they watched Challenge of the GoBots. GoBots were lame. They were exactly like the Transformers, but they weren't Transformers. Only the Transformers were the Transformers. So as cool as the Transformers were, that's how not cool the GoBots were. And I remember I was about 7 years old, and I'm getting a gift, and I'm opening it up, and I see it's my very first Transformer. I can't wait to tell all my friends, and I'm opening it up, and can you guess what Transformer it was? Yeah, it was a GoBot. It wasn't a Transformer. I was so bummed. I couldn't tell any of my friends that I had a GoBot. There was another show about a short, fat bear named Kissy Fur, and I was a short, fat kid named Christopher, so I got teased enough about cartoons. I wasn't adding another one to the list. So I played with my GoBot when nobody was around, and frankly, it was a cool toy when nobody was around. But if I knew my friends were coming over, I buried that sucker so deep in my toy box, and I just hoped that nobody would ever find it. And every once in a while, somebody would pull it out, and they'd be like, "Oh, Chris, what Transformer is this?" And I'd be like, I don't remember his name, but he's definitely a Transformer, and he's definitely not a GoBot. Okay. You know it says GoBots right on the bottom, right? Oh, yeah, about that. That's his name. GoBots. GoBots the Transformer. Yes, that's his name. You didn't hear about GoBots? He was only in one episode, but he's basically the most powerful Transformer ever. Him and his gang, they're the reason the Autobots are still alive. What was his gang? That wasn't the Insecticons or the Constructicons. The trademark infringementicons. Yes, that was them. So yeah, that's my lesson. GoBots were lame and Transformers are cool. Thanks for coming. No, there's more to it than that. Did you know, hear me out, Riley Thone, because I'm about to blow your mind. Did you know Transformers are real? Transformers are real. I met one, and not just a guy in a costume. I met a Transformer. Hear me out. I'm 4 years old. I'm sitting in a Sunday school class, and my Sunday school teacher asks, who wants to get saved? Does anybody want to get saved? And I have no idea what these words mean, but I know two things. One, if you're saved, it means when you die, you get to go to heaven for eternity and spend eternity with Jesus. And two, if you're not saved, I know that if you die, you have to go to hell and spend eternity in a lake of fire. So I think about that for about a millisecond. Eternity in a lake of fire? No, sign me up for the other one. That's the one I want. So I say the magic words, Jesus, come into my heart. And from that day forward, I did everything a good Christian was supposed to do. I went to church every Sunday. I actually went twice on Sundays because we had a morning service and an evening service. On Wednesdays, I went to Awana and I memorized all my verses. I did all my books. I actually did all my books twice, and somewhere in my mom's basement, there's a box full of all my trophies and stuff. When I was in high school, my church had a Bible quiz team. And we would go from church to church all over West Michigan, and we would challenge these other churches to see who knew the Bible the best. In my first year doing it, I scored so many points that I was the second highest individual scorer in the whole state of Michigan. And I knew the Bible. I went to church. I did everything a good Christian was supposed to do when I was with people at church. If I was at school and somebody brought up me going to church, I'd be like, yeah, I go to church, but I'm not one of those Jesus freaks. I'm not going to bash you over the head with the Bible. I'm drag you off to church and make you go to heaven. That's not me. I was embarrassed because it was lame. Now, before I finish, you're going to know my entire life story, but my mom's cousin had two sons my age, Jimmy and Joey, and they were a couple of my best friends. I loved hanging out with them. I would go to their house. I would spend like a week at a time at their house, and I loved it, except for one thing. Their dad was scary. He was mean. He was angry. Frankly, he was a bad guy. As much as I loved hanging out with my cousins, I hated being around their dad. But one day something happened. His name was Jim, and Jim prayed, and he asked God to change him. And instantly, Jim went from one of the meanest, angriest people I've ever known to one of the godliest men I've ever met. And I told you Transformers are real. Optimus Prime is cool and Bumblebee's cool. But the ultimate Transformer is the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit transformed him in an instant. And I watched Jim and I thought, that's not what I have. He's got something different than what I have. And I realized that I was like that GoBots cartoon when I was a kid. I didn't want to admit that I knew the Bible. And I didn't want to admit what I had because what I had wasn't the real thing. I was acting like a Jesus follower, but I was not a follower of Jesus. And like that toy that I had that was a GoBot and I lied and told everybody it was a Transformer, I lied and told people I was a follower of Jesus. And even when I realized that it was a lie, I continued to tell it for a few more years. In Romans 12, the Apostle Paul says, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I knew that the only way to do that was through the Holy Spirit. And I watched and I thought, if the Holy Spirit could change Jim so drastically and so quickly, I bet he could do that for me. So when I was 25, I was laying in bed and I prayed. And I asked God to change me. And as I was laying there praying, I could almost hear it. I was transformed in an instant. I went from the guy who didn't want to admit to knowing the Bible to a guy who wanted to study the Bible and learn more and more and more. I went from a guy who didn't want to talk to people about Jesus to a guy who prayed for opportunities to tell people about Jesus. There is a real transformer. I met him. Have you met him? If you haven't, I would love the opportunity to talk more with you about him. Maybe even introduce you to him. You're not going to see him transform into a car or a truck or a jet or anything like that, but you may see him transform you into a completely different person. That's all I got. Happy Memorial Day.